Welcome to FPB's Meet the Candidates. This Cable 10 series allows you, the voter, to hear directly from candidates their views on issues that are important to our community. This is all leading up to the primary election, which is from now until June 23rd. Yes, things are a little different this year as we are social distancing, so we're conducting our interviews from different locations. We took questions this year from social media and email, so we have a lot of different topics to get into, so let's jump right into it. Today's guest is Anna Marie Rosen, and she's a candidate for Frankfort City Commission. Welcome, Anna Marie.
Thank you, Kathy. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I just want to jump right in and let you start out by telling everybody who you are and why you've decided to run for City Commission.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you to the Frankfort Plant Board for hosting this Meet the Candidate interview. The coronavirus is pushing us to develop new ways to communicate, and using technology to make distance recordings is a great way to work within the quarantine guidelines and share candidate profiles with the community. So as Cathy mentioned, I'm Anna Marie Rosen. I'm running for City Commission. I studied fine arts and mechanical engineering and then went to work for 3M Company in product development. That's where I met my husband, Richard, of 40 years now of marriage. And we were transferred to Austin, Texas. We chose to relocate here to Frankfort 10 years ago, and we both love living in Frankfort. I enjoy being part of this friendly and amazing community. The people, the historic sites, the classic architecture all contribute to the charm that makes our capital city an inspiring place to be. During the past 4 years, I was a director on the board for the Frankfort Plant Board. And I was stunned to discover that important decisions were made without critical analysis. I like digging into details and studying problems from multiple perspectives. And my goal is always to determine the best long-term solution for the entire community based on both public input and careful research. Frankfort is a great place to be. And there's so much going on. We have so much potential to do more things. Together, we can make it an even better place to live. And I believe I'll be able to make vital contributions as we move forward.
Great. So you talked about the experience that you have. So how do you feel like this experience has prepared you to get things done on the City Commission?
Well, a number of different areas. One of my first projects was to reduce the wait time for customers coming in to pay bills or ask questions at the plant board. And we carefully implemented a plan to have 2 billing cycles. And that helped to reduce the stress on the staff and also help customers to not have to be in such a long queue. Other things is trying to make the meetings as transparent as possible, sharing our thoughts and ideas during those meetings. Public drinking fountains was another project, just to let people know that we have really great water and that it's accessible to anyone in a number of locations now in the city of Frankfort.
Okay. So what do you see as the biggest issue facing the City Commission right now, and how do you propose to address it if elected?
Wow, 2 months ago, the biggest issue would have been a completely different answer, but now the coronavirus is affecting everything we do. And I think there are 3 things the City Commission can be doing now and continue to be doing. And that's, first of all, look over the budget. Look at things that aren't going to help businesses survive, things that involve spending money outside of the city of Frankfort, and either reduce those or put them on hold. The second thing I think that would be good is if the commission mayor would ask Keith Parker to ask each of the departments to see what they could do to help businesses. And the term small business comes up a lot, and to me that's any business that is not a national chain, and how we can help those. Certainly monetary help is important, but there are other things. One example might be closing St. Clair Mall to vehicle traffic so that the restaurants that are there can use that space for outdoor dining, which is so much safer than being inside with all our virus germs. And the third area is to move ahead as quickly as we can with the TIF financing and working through that process to get going on revitalizing downtown by building out parcels B and C. TIF financing requires group meetings, and we need to find an electronic way to do that so we can move ahead. So those are the three solutions to the biggest problem we have.
Okay. Well, given the ongoing economic crisis that we're all facing now because of COVID-19, people are saying, it's a time to pull together and pool our resources. So because of that, do you think this is the time to revisit the issue of a merged government with city and county?
I think, that's been formally attempted twice in general elections, which it should be, of course, because it affects everyone. But I think that the city and the county have already demonstrated working together. Things like the ambulance service is run by the city. The fire and police departments have agreements of proximity. Who's ever closest should go to that situation first. The county runs the jail, and the city pays inmate fee to help support that. So I think continuing to work closely together is the most important step. And the formal merger of the two, I think, may come eventually, but it's not required in order to just work together.
Okay. Well, as you know, Frankfort has a city manager form of government. So with that form of government, what do you see as the role of a city commissioner?
I believe that the city commissioner should work with all the other commissioners and the mayor to come up with strategies that are joint strategies, and to give direction to the city manager to implement those ideas, and also to listen to the feedback from the city manager of what the ideas would take to implement.
Okay. How can the city, do you think, improve communications with the people, with the public, whether it's reporting a pothole or publishing vital public health information or anything in between?
Well, I know the city has a website, and they also have a Facebook page. I think that on the other side, what do residents have? Some don't have computers, most have televisions, and almost everyone has a cell phone. So I think finding a means for people to be able to leave a post with the city using their cell phone or using a computer, especially with the pandemic, but also just the ease of doing it would be best. So opening communication and keeping in mind the technology that we have to work with.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned the exciting projects we have going on downtown, particularly parcels B and C. So with that, Frankfort has a unique opportunity to facilitate an economic stimulus that is needed now more than ever, as we've been discussing. However, there is also the question whether the developer can find a viable way forward post-COVID, because there may be some changes. So what should city government do, if anything, to reduce the developer's risk in an effort to make the project successful?
Yep, even in good times, that would be a tricky question. I have talked to one of the developers, and there will be partnership between three. There are a couple of different aspects. Money, of course, is a big one, and tax incentive financing is an excellent way to go, and it involves a whole strategy of community input. Also, we have the master plan, which people were involved in, that was finalized in 2018. I think relying on the master plan, going back to that, and really thinking about those different aspects. So it's development of parcels B and C. The portion that we haven't heard a lot about is what will happen with the plaza. And the developer I spoke with said they feel strongly that they're in a good position in negotiations and have a plan, but it's not finalized, so they can't publicize that at this point. So that aspect. Also, the master plan goes into the grid structure for traffic, how to improve that, putting Washington Street through, developing a new plan for the Y. So I think going back to those decisions that have already been made and start implementing them, it's been about a year and a half since it was formalized. We now have a developer. And one thing about the developer too that's important, a lot of people think, okay, he's the only one who applied and he got this bid for $1,000. Well, that's not entirely true. There are about 8 applications. He represents the only application that qualified, and qualifying meant things like a letter from the bank that you can get $85 million worth of funding. So pretty stiff requirements. And I think we should be very pleased that we have a developer who wants to work with us, whose spouse was actually born and raised here in Frankfort and has done national projects, so has experience and a commitment to our city.
Okay. Another exciting project we have going on downtown is on 2nd Street. In 2016, Frankfort received an $8 million federal grant, the Tiger Grant, to reconstruct the 2nd Street corridor. So are you familiar with the plans? Have you seen the planned improvements, and is there anything in particular that you like or something that you think that needs to be changed?
I'm very happy with the Tiger Grant and how it's being implemented. And I think, the biggest part of that grant is really infrastructure. It's things that are underground that will make a difference. Uncombining, or we have combined sewer through most of the city, but by separating that between water runoff from streets and sewage, we can reduce the amount of flow into the Kentucky River of raw sewage and meet the consent requirements. Other beautification parts of it I think will be very helpful. It's only a small part of the 2nd Street development, and so that there's more beyond the $8 million Tiger Grant, but that part is so important because without improving the structures that we can't even see, we would be wasting our money.
Okay. Well, as we've seen with recent events, buying local is crucial to keeping our local economy healthy. How would you work with the Chamber of Commerce to support local businesses?
Yes, I agree that buying locally and valuing our location here with Governor Beshear's direction to not travel, I think it's put more people's interest on staying at home and enjoying our parks, our trails, just walking. And to improve our area, I think, I know the outlying areas, some of the roads are in poor repair, and many roads in the farther away from downtown areas do not have sidewalks, and mobility issues there for both children and handicapped people. So improving those things. Working with the chamber links in closely to businesses and what they need to make their projects work is important. But I also think that the city should have a person to work with businesses, in particular work with new businesses as they show an interest in coming here, to sit down with them and say, what is your vision? What is your plan? How can we help? And to let that positive welcoming and stick with that new potential candidates may be a confusing word there, new business that might want to be here, and to follow through with them.
Okay. Well, how can the city commission incentivize and attract new business and industry to Frankfort?
That is the question I think every community asks themselves. And I think being welcoming is the very first thing that we can work on. And we have so much potential in infrastructure that is here that's underutilized. We have the Sears building out on the east side. We have Elder Berman that went out of business. J.C. Penney's is at risk. A good example of an area where we have worked well is the former Kmart site, which now has 2 businesses, Aldi's, which hasn't opened quite yet, but is working toward it, and Harbor Freight. There's also Chick-fil-A, which is in that same parking area, so creating a cluster where people go. So I think utilizing the structure, the infilling that we have. The other thing that we have a lot of are empty houses that could be utilized, and we have some people who have been developing those, but when I've talked to them, they've said how frustrated they are when they get a citation from the city because they haven't painted their structure and they're in the process of painting it. Now, we've had a lot of rain over the last 2 or 3 years, So, perhaps that was a factor or other factors, but communicating with them, I think, would be our biggest positive thing. And I know there are plans that people discuss about incentives and tax deferrals or tax reductions for new businesses, but I'm not even sure we need that. We just need to let people know that we can work with them and we want them to be successful.
Okay. Well, another issue that I know businesses here in our community are having is that once they find skilled workers to fill their positions, they often cannot pass a drug test. So what can the City Commission do to help address this issue in our community?
Wow. Yes, drugs and drugs leading to crime are a problem everywhere, and it's very pervasive. I guess, more than guessing, I think that focusing on things that would help persons who have a drug problem. We have the needle exchange program. We have homeless shelters and other housing. So I think improving our housing so that it can cover all income levels. There's Section 8 provisions that could be utilized by landlords.
Well, we have a homelessness issue right now. That was going to be my next question. Obviously, since the quarantine has started, we've had to have an overflow homeless shelter in Frankfort High's gym on Ewing Street to house our homeless people in Frankfort. So do you have any ideas that the city government could put into play to address our issue of homelessness here in Frankfort?
That is an important issue and very much of a concern, and especially with businesses laying off people that don't have incomes. I know that the governor has put a moratorium on evictions, but that will only help for a while. Once things start up again, there'll still be some people that are missed. That's a problem that I think would be best served by putting together a task force, and they would make recommendations. We have Rosen, we have the food pantry, we have housing coalitions in different areas. I think getting them all together and getting recommendations from the experts on that and then implementing those recommendations by the City Commission.
Okay. In the last City Commission election 2 years ago, candidates commented on the stagnant population growth in Franklin County and that Frankfort needs a positive change to spur growth. Do you feel like the current City Commission has made a positive impact in moving Frankfort in the right direction? And what would you have done differently, or what ideas do you have, if elected, that would help spur growth in our community?
That is true. Growth here in the community is lower than we'd like to see. In fact, I was looking at the comprehensive plan, and also we read the master plan, and I think that lack of viable housing is one aspect. I think that nearby communities offer many options that we don't have here, so working on those things. I think it's too soon to tell the current commission whether they followed, been able to make an impact on that. They've actually only been in office for a little over a year, so it's hard to see change that quickly. But I think that working on housing should be our first priority.
Okay. What do you think Frankfort can do to attract more young people to the community?
Wow, I've been doing a lot of phone calling since door-to-door doesn't work, of course, but I usually start by asking people what would they see as a priority, what would they see as a different operation than what we're doing now. And what consistently comes up is things for youth to do. And that in the distant past, maybe decades ago, there were not camp counselors, but similar to camp counselors in parks that could offer a ball and instructions on how to play a game, that incorporating some of those things would be helpful. I think just changing the community emphasis to we're all in this together, and what can we work with, what can we develop.
I know that you are an avid bicycle rider. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Frankfort in our walk, bike, run ability in the community? Uh, Accessibility.
Yes, there are sections of Frankfurt that are fun to ride a bicycle on, and there are others that are, I would put in the treacherous category. And as far as children being able to use some of our roads to go places, there are many that are difficult. So I think there are some bright spots. The master plan, the comprehensive plan shows ideas to interconnect those. Walk Bike Frankfurt was very demonstrative in that area. I know that, I found certain areas that are fun to ride. Shankill Lane between 421 and East Main has a nice sidewalk, bike path, but we don't have them all connected. Riverview Park is nice, but if you're riding at any speed, you can finish that in less than a half hour. So we need to interconnect those. And again, that goes back to what can we do in the farther out areas that aren't downtown, which is improve our roads, have shoulders, and more importantly, even just sidewalks would be helpful.
Okay. Recently, we've had problems with consistent recycling. What solutions do you propose for limiting the waste in our town that needs to be recycled or thrown away so we can avoid future problems?
Yes, I have toured West Rock Recycling twice in Louisville and also Lexington Recycling in Lexington. And yes, by switching to West Rock, we can recycle all plastics, glass, and paper. Things that either we can't recycle or it's much more difficult. And it's a distressing problem too, from the standpoint of about 10 years ago nationally, the interest was going to single stream recycling. And we're there, and we have people who want to recycle, and now they're stuck. So I think that the costs, well, I know costs in landfills are going up and the space is being reduced, and no one wants a landfill near them. So it's time to really look carefully at moving to West Rock Recycling and recycling more. It's difficult for recyclers to recycle just a small amount of material. They need a vast amount of material so that they can make the budget work out properly. The other thing to think about there is really there are 3 R's. There's reduce, reuse, and recycle. So working with companies with new products on how they could reduce their amount of packaging, and I think companies have done that to a certain extent, and finding reuses for things. I save little yogurt cups and plant small seedlings in it. So at least try to make items have a second life before they end up in either recycling or the landfill. So I think it takes a whole strategy, and I think communicating that is an important aspect that regardless of where recycling continues, communication is important to get that to the residents.
Okay. We're running a little short on time, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions that only require just a short answer.
Okay.
So do you support allowing chickens within city limits?
Definitely I do. I see that as part of the recycle program, that food waste and food preparation portions could be fed to those chickens along with a little chicken chow, and they give us eggs. Children would learn where eggs come from, and so they would help us reduce our amount of waste and also give us a product along with nitrogen fertilizer for our gardens.
Great. Would you support regulations on food trucks?
I believe that the health department has regulations for all types of food distribution, and I think that those should be implemented. I think that the purpose of food trucks is to bring food in places where there's no food available. Where we have downtown restaurants, bringing in food trucks just competes with the restaurants that are paying taxes that are here every day. And I would see the use of food trucks as farther out locations.
Okay. Where do you stand on the bicycle ban at Leslie Morris Park?
I love bicycles, and I think that they're sometimes associated with children's and play, but I see bicycles as a form of transportation. I agree that if people don't want them in the immediate historic area, that they shouldn't be there. But even more in line with that, they shouldn't be abusing the structures that we want to preserve. If someone rode past a Civil War site and stopped and learned something, I think that's a valuable exposure. And by limiting it is negative. It also limits people's vision of Frankfort. They look at it as, well, I'd like to go there, but I'd have to be careful about what I do.
Okay. Well, now it's your time to look into your camera and speak directly to the voters and tell them why you are the best candidate for City Commission and why they should vote for you.
Okay, thank you, Cathy.
Sure.
I'm happy to be a candidate for City Commission. I have important strengths that I think will move projects forward. My background in working on technical problems for 3M and the plant board means that I have the skills to delve into complex situations and find solutions. And I love tackling problems. So while I was on the plant board, we touched on that earlier, I promoted common sense strategies to improve wait times or reduce wait times. And I want to be transparent and use care in handling public money. Frankfort is about to turn a new page with the development of parcels B and C, and this presents a growth opportunity for the city that we can act on now and help us out of the effects of the coronavirus. If elected, I will advance the city by working with the commission and the mayor to reach out to the community for ideas and concerns. As a retired engineer, I have the training and the time to really dedicate my efforts towards solving complex situations. I believe in asking the public for their input and also seek information from experts. I like to bring in all parties involved. I love living in this friendly community and historic aspects of Kentucky, being here, the Kentucky River, being part of that. And I hope to make Frankfort an even more appealing place to live. My position on the ballot is number 8, and I'm asking for your vote on June 23rd. Thank you, and thank you to the plant board.
Great. So how can folks learn more about you? Do you have social media that you want to share?
Yes, I do. I have a Facebook page, which is Anna Marie Rosen 2020. I also have a website, which is annamarierosen.com. And those are the 2 main ways.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know our viewers appreciate hearing from you. And to our viewers, let me say, voting's different this year. So be sure to go online and go to govoteky.com to request your ballot and get up to date on the voting process because this year it's different. So it's time. It's election season, people. So let's get informed and let's go voice your choice anytime between now and June 23rd. And that's all we have for this edition of Meet the Candidates. So we'll see you next time.